Hello, I am joined by Andrew McCardle, a filmmaker based in Brooklyn, and I will be discussing with him his upcoming film, It's Always Been You, his first feature film. And I am so excited to have you, Andrew. Thank you for joining me to discuss your film. I'm so excited to talk to you. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely, Diego. Pleasure to be here. Happy to be talking to you about it. And yeah, this is one of the first of these I've been able to do where we talk about the film a lot. So it's been great. And I know you've seen it.
Yeah, I've had the chance to see it. It's packed with so many ideas, so many themes, very thoughtful work. And I think we're going to have a great conversation about some of these topics. But first, I want to give you the chance to introduce yourself briefly and maybe tell us a little bit about what this film means to you, being that it's your first feature film.
Yeah, I think as the first, it's obviously really meaningful, and it kind of you maybe it's too packed because you of course want to every idea you have, you really want to like just start getting it in there for it's the first film and everything. Prior to this, it's like I've been like more or less film obsessed since being a teenager. I was writing films and drawing storyboards and all this kind of stuff, learning camera, learning editing, all through high school, like all this kind of stuff. And yeah, so to make short films over the years and kind of be able to get those more bite-sized ideas and the contents that you have these big concepts and like these deep dark woods that you want to go into, and in a 90-minute runtime, you finally get to go there. You get to finally go somewhere where you can take the audience on a longer journey than just a 10-minute or a 15-minute type of film. So it was just felt like the right moment, both personally and the atmosphere of the times. When I started to put this together, there was so much about what was happening in 2016 that it just felt like something is boiling underneath the surface, something is going on. And I think was kind of thinking a lot about films like Do the Right Thing, where there's something about it being like the hottest day of the summer that brings out these people's real emotions. And how could something's boiling under the surface, but how could you also create an environment in the film where it's like you feel this heat and you feel like that's what's making these people boil over with their emotions and how they're feeling about things and all these different topics. But I guess I kind of saw it as like a time capsule in some ways. Okay. And then in other ways, just sort of felt like this, real dreamscape. So sometimes, it's in reality, and other times it's not so much. But yeah, 2016 seemed to be the right moment to capture a changing New York that I felt like maybe wouldn't exist for much longer. And as we know now, it probably won't, because a lot of these places, even where we filmed now, likely won't reopen because of COVID. So it's felt relevant.
Absolutely. And a fun fact, the film actually takes place, or it's in the time in, I think it's September 5th, which is almost exactly 4 years ago of this filming of the interview. So that's very interesting that came together. And where did this idea come from to create a film about these certain topics that we're going to get into? But where did that kind of start for you, and how did that create its own way to making a realization?
I think I thought, how do you make a film about the spirit of the times, where the spirit of that time period becomes the character and not so much any specific character's journey. So I think, first and foremost, I thought, well, we won't make it about one specific person. It's just about a neighborhood of people, and they're all get equal focus, more or less. Some, I guess, are in more than others, but really there's no central character to focus on. So you have this feeling of the time that kind of permeates the whole thing. And I think also in that same sense, it allowed for it to be this kind of not period piece, but like present piece. So I kind of thought like, okay, if I was to make a film right now that was set in the 1960s or something, there'd be certain things that you'd want to include to make it feel like it's the 60s. And I thought how fun to do that for the current time we're living in, like how fun to have this period piece that's shot in the moment So it's, you know, able to respond to these things. I think, I don't know, we kept it really malleable because it was like, we didn't film it traditionally where you film kind of all at once. It was being written throughout the spring, and the script was more or less done, but it had a lot of potential to be rewritten or reworked in separate ways as we moved through it. And we started to shoot, I think, end of June, and filmed all through the warm months into September. But we would really shoot maybe once a week, maybe twice a week, and things that would happen. I think right when the game, which is featured in the film, which is Pokemon Go, I didn't know what it was, but one of the actors on set one day was kept like wandering off, and I kept being like, "What? Come on, what are you?" I don't know what, you keep looking at your phone, or is something going on? Like, is there an emergency? He's like, "No, man, no, I'm just trying to catch Squirtle," or whatever it is he was saying. So I thought, okay, that needs to be in there. We now need to like rework a later scene to incorporate that. Like, so yeah, it had a lot of things like that where stuff that was happening in the moment that, you know, I mean, I didn't know what that was in, you know, April or May while we're writing it. But of course, you know, by the time we shot that scene where the kids are playing the game in August, it had become this whole relevant thing to people that year, and a lot of other things that got touched on kind of evolved that way.
Let's watch the trailer and give everybody a little bit of a sense of what they can expect.
Sounds good.
Have you seen this? I don't know, the whole place is like a 10-cent postcard.
What is the nature of human existence?
There are those who look to part of the future, and then those who live in the past.
The purpose of human existence is to feed information to machines.
I like technology as much as you like technology, but the robot's not going to make a sandwich.
We don't speak about tomorrow.
It says here the country is bracing for civil unrest.
I think life is like a jukebox. You push the right buttons, you get exactly what you want.
If this is over, just tell me right now.
That was cut by Gabrielle Foster Pryor, who's he's an editor out of the UK, and he just did such a great job with it. I loved his interpretation of the film and kind of like what he chose to highlight about it. Yeah, I think the trailer comes off really well.
Tell us a little bit about the collaboration of being a much bigger project for you. What was that like to work with collaborators? Who was involved in the making of this film?
A lot of friends that, you know, I've worked with throughout the years. Producers were Roger Mulligan, Matt Barone, and myself, and I've known them, you know, for a decade or more. You know, Roger's a great actor. Matt's a great producer. They both jumped in and produced. Roger's in the film. He has cameos like throughout, sort of a thing. And yeah, without them, I don't know how I would have done it, because they just provided so much resource expertise, like boots on the ground, you know, there for every shoot kind of a thing. Yeah, that was you know, unbelievable. And then kind of people from the neighborhood as well. You know, there's a history professor from you know, Fort Greene, Richard McGuire, who also helped to jump in, like produce, he acts in the film. Like, you know, we just sort of found people throughout the neighborhood. There's a bartender who bartends at a bowling alley. I don't know if you know it, Melody Lanes in Sunset Park. But he's kind of this like local celebrity. He's this like real like guru just about he everything from philosophy to mathematics. You know, he's just got this incredible theory of the universe, Peter Napolitano, and he's also in the film in the Leone scene. He's at the beginning of it. You can't miss him because he definitely delivers a very like deep speech that I think a lot of people have been resonating with. But yeah, then as far as the crew goes, it would just change per shoot, or the actors would change per shoot, because there's nobody who was really involved in any more than 2 or 3 shoots for the whole thing, since it is such a wide spread. But then the post team became unbelievably integral, especially the sound team, to give it its flavor. It's the visuals are one thing, and I think we all focus on like trying to get that great color, and what's it going to look like, and where are we going to film it, what do the sets look like, and all that other stuff. But which is hugely important. But I've definitely heard it said by some other filmmakers that it's a 60-40, where the sound is really 60% of what the audience experiences, which I think is true. So we had this amazing sound team. It was led by Luigi Porto, who's an Italian sound designer who really gave it so much of its flavor. And then Vinny Alfano, who is Brooklyn-based as well, and mixes at a studio called Parabolic in Manhattan. And that's where we mixed it to the whole, Dolby mix. But Vinny was just such a constant collaborator. He was probably attached to the project for almost a year straight, and just did so much to, I can't stress enough, like what he brought to the sound and what his work meant to the film. And then, of course, the composers, I cannot forget Silvio Buchmeyer, who did most of the composition, and then Tyler Gilmore, who's also Brooklyn-based, jumped in to provide Reel 5, which is like the last maybe 20 minutes of the film, with its own flavor. So it's like you've got one composer for the first like hour or so, and he brings so much to it to make it feel, so we see that tapestry of the world, and we see the dance of kind of reality and how that's all working together. But then in Reel 5, it all gets very digitized, and it turns into this much more like synthetic landscape. And that's when Tyler made this incredible kind of synth score, this electronic score that just transforms the film across the board.
I mean, to me, the sound and the music were integral, but also played a role almost like a main character that drove a lot of the emotional responses, in my opinion, of the film. And just like you said, it's one thing to see the visual. And in fact, I'll admit that my second time watching was actually not watching. I just let it play in the background as I cooked, just to take in the music, take in the soundscapes, and it totally achieved what I expected, which was it put me in the place and the time. And right behind, it supported the ideas that I thought the film was about, which, like you said, for me, it's time, it's technology, it's the present time, maybe memory, all these things that were floating in my head already after watching it for the first time. The sound and the music really supported. So the first time I watched it, I didn't know where to place it as far, well, it's like, you're telling me visually that we're in Brooklyn, it's happening in one day, but then I start questioning whether these are memories or present moments. Could it be the future? Where were you as far as that thought behind making the film?
Yeah, I wanted to touch on that exactly as you're saying, because I wanted it to feel like, yes, the film is showing you something, and there's a focus, but your attention doesn't necessarily always need to be on that focus. Your attention can be on everything else that's happening around. I kind of was messing with that idea of like nonlinear time, which is, in my understanding of physics, is the fact that like linear time and the way that we experience time happening sequentially is sort of a byproduct of the way that the human mind experiences things. Right. And that in reality, if we were to take a look at time in a space-time, perspective of the cosmos, it's really just sort of happening all simultaneously. So it's this kind of feeling that, that the future, the past, the present are all kind of equal in that sense, and they're all simultaneous. But as well as I kind of wanted there to be these 3 worlds in a kind of a tapestry. So in one sense, it's like at the top of the film, you open the film here, in a place outside of time, in a place beyond time. It's an ethereal plane. It's a spiritual place. There's a character who's maybe a ghost who lives in this place, and it's just someone who doesn't experience time the way that we do. And then we enter into this more like, I guess I'll call it like mundane material reality, which is the material universe. And from there, we progress through the end of the film into like a digital landscape. So once again, it's a human-created, like manufactured synthetic environment and reality where once again, time doesn't matter. Because if you were to exist, if you're an AI existing in cyberspace, rather than a person existing in the space of the cosmos, you wouldn't really experience time either, I don't think. You could say that the AI would be told what time it is in human terms, but inside of cyberspace where it would live, would it not just experience everything happening simultaneously? So I think it was trying to find an organic way of showing that, as well as a synthetic way of showing that. Like, what are other beings that don't experience time? And I think that right now, the big conversation is obviously AI, and what is its life experience going to be like if and when, I'm assuming it's not actually if anymore, but when it becomes self-aware, when there are these synthetic entities that can think and they have feelings, perhaps, what is that experience like for them? How do they experience something that's, I guess it's just all happening all the time?
For me, the film really touched upon all those ideas, and in a way, it made me question whether time was just, or a human experience, what it meant to be human was my perception of time, and the idea that I could break it up, right? And the reason why we have day and night, and the reason why we have hours is because we can subdivide it. But then you can take that to the next level and say, I can keep dividing that almost infinitely. You can dig deeper into it, and at that point, then what is time at the end of it all, right? And if we are not able to question or break it up, then is it just all around us? Is it, like you said, in this multidimensional space?
I think cinema is so good at having a way of communicating these abstract topics. I don't even speaking about it now, I don't know that I can put it in a eloquent way to really speak about it, but I do feel like that subconscious experience, that like, the film is almost like I had a dream and I'm just able to show you what the dream was, kind of a thing. And I hope that I don't know, it's such a great medium for having those kind of like subtext type of feelings come across, because it's a really abstract concept, this whole thing that like maybe time is just a human experience and nothing else experiences it quite like we do. It's a notion that I think cinema is really good at communicating that kind of thing.
And I think it's a great balance with these really abstract ideas that are hard to ponder and understand, right? And we might never really have the answers for, but this film talks about them in a very simple way. It's like we're seeing life as it's happening in New York City, and it's the sounds around. And I almost imagine that this film will allow people to divert from the experience of walking down the street. And if you could take yourself out of your body and then follow somebody else for the next 20 minutes, which would be kind of creepy, but if you could, this film allows you to do that. It almost answers that question of, hey, when you see that interesting person walking by you and you never see them again, what would it be like to follow them and experience their time in that sense, in sort of our paths crossing back and forth, all intertwined. So.
Yeah, I think it's something that every New Yorker understands, because it's like, you're not always moving around in a group. I think that everyone who lives in New York probably spends a lot of time just sort of going somewhere solo. So you're always kind of like that observer. You're heading for the train, you're walking down the street, or at least before COVID, you're walking down the street heading to the train, and life is happening all around you. And yeah, you might hear bits and pieces of people conversing, or you might see something for a split second, but like yeah, you always do wonder, like, what's the rest of that story of that person I just passed by, and I'll never know. But you just sort of keep moving. So yeah, I wanted to capture that feeling in some of those scenes where you just are like, you just keep moving down that sidewalk.
Most of this film takes place, like you said, on the streets of New York City because there is so many moments, right? There's so much happening around you quickly, and it's quickly changing. Is this film, in your opinion, or in concept, location specific? Is this about the experience of being a New Yorker, or could this also touch upon a more global understanding of what it means to be a human?
I would hope that it plays in a very universal kind of global sense like that, where it's just sort of about the experience of living. But I also think that it's kind of like, it's so specific, to this place, this type of life. So it's kind of like, it's kind of the same question as everything else in the film. It's sort of like, you're only in one place at one time, but how do you feel like you're everywhere all at once? So hopefully it has both to it.
Absolutely. I imagine that maybe someone living in a more like rural lifestyle where they might just see the same people in their daily lives, and their schedule sort of doesn't allow them to experience all this randomness, right? So I definitely connected with the New York experience in that sense, that it was specific to the location, but then it made me question myself as a human being, and what it meant to be alive, knowing that we're all gonna die one day. And in a way that gives life meaning, right? It gives it the purpose of, you have this amount of time that we've created. What do you do with it? What happens within that time?
Absolutely. And I think that that's some of the best elements of just art in general, not just film, but just art in general. Yeah, it kind of like puts you in touch with eternity, because I think that you don't really think about that on the day-to-day, or at least I don't think about it on the day-to-day. I try to, but you really are a lot of the time just caught up in what you're doing. And it takes maybe, going into nature or something and being able to just kind of like look out at the ocean for a while, and then you sort of feel like you're put back in touch with it. So yeah, I think I was kind of hoping that the experience of seeing this can be that meditative moment for the audience to get back in touch with that feeling of eternity and that feeling of what else is out there beyond just what I see on the day-to-day.
This film reminds viewers that something as simple as making a sandwich or eating a sandwich is part of life having meaning, right? Would you agree?
I think so, yeah. And I mean, that goes beyond my own personal love of sandwiches. It's definitely it hits at these points where, it's kind of like, again, it's something that could be so simple, and there's a debate very quickly in the film where I think the younger character just sort of says like, yeah, what does that matter? You could just have a robot that could just make that sandwich for you. It's the same thing. And then the older character is definitely on the side of like, that's not true. You need a human touch to make a really great sandwich. And I just, I thought that rang true to me.
Who are looking to up themselves, and I don't know. There's no humanity here anymore. I can't stand it.
So, did you ever think about the world going in a different direction back then?
No, I'm talking about the way things were.
Yeah, exactly. The way things were back then. Did you ever imagine that the world would end up being something a little different?
Well, I imagined that the world would change. It would be different. It would go in a different direction, but I didn't imagine that we'd be experiencing something that was invented in some mad scientist laboratory.
You can see it yourself. Have you seen this? Okay, we live in a free country. Do we realize how lucky we are that we live in this country? We could be in France. We could be 80 of them. Like, God.
You like it?
So, down the line, when I'm, 40, you think there'll be so much automation that we don't even have a need for sandwich shops anymore?
What? What? Huh?
I mean, I'm just saying, am I going to be walking down the street lamenting about the fact that people used to make sandwiches with their hands and now it's all bagel bots?
Oh, look. I like technology as much as you like technology, but technology can't make a sandwich. A robot's not going to make a sandwich. A sandwich is not just a pile of meat. A sandwich is made by a person. It's food. It has flavor. It has subtlety. So forget about technology and sandwiches.
I don't know. I mean, they say a robot killed that guy in Dallas. How long is it going to be before they're shooting people making sandwiches all day, every day? And all I know is that if it's cheap, people are going to buy it and move on with their lives. Nobody exactly laments the sandwich.
Well, people are going to do what they need to do to survive. I know that. But with each successive chew and swallow, eventually they're going to say, fuck this whole city.
Well, it's finance guys you got to look out for. Apparently, New York is, you know, after the Brits went under. But in the grand scheme of things, I wouldn't stress about it too much.
Well, I hear you on that. You know, they say stress is the major cause of cancer in people my age.
Well, stay away from sugar. You'll be fine. God, you know, I really wish we went into that record shop.
Well, there's a record shop right over there.
Oh, hell yeah.
It's a great scene.
I mean, Victor kills me in that scene. I mean, Sparkman's, they're both incredible, and they kind of have such a good chemistry, and they really play off of each other really well. It's, yeah, I mean, we had another actor originally cast in his role who dropped out. I think, like, we filmed this on a Saturday. They dropped out, like, Thursday night. So he jumped in on Friday. You know, he you know, learned the lines probably, like, that day or something, and just, like, went right into it. He brings so much to it. And yeah, his delivery on the fuck the whole city thing is hilarious. And yeah, Sparkman just, she would come to set some days when she wasn't even in the scene. She was so into it, just like an incredible amount of like dedication. And yeah, I know, you know, she's kind of just threw herself into every element of it.
They're having a really great conversation there, which we get a lot of in many different moments with different characters. But some of the things they're talking about often is the time. You know, they're always going back to time. Maybe they're reminiscing of the past, but looking forward to the future. But their conversation always revolves around this idea of technology, and we can't deny that technology has made our lives better. It has improved. It has evolved us as human beings. What is the relationship between technology and the human experience in this film? Like, we see it all the time. We see phones, we see screens. What is this film really saying about our relationship with technology?
I think that it's like undeniably ever present, and I also think that, at least for me, I think it changes the way that that you experience the world. Like, I don't know. I think they say that, like, you know, the 5 people you choose to spend the most time with affects your worldview quite a bit. But also, it's like the medium that you're existing with a lot probably does about the same thing. So I think that, like, you know, I certainly notice a difference in the way that just my own cognition functions based on like I think I got a smartphone in like 2009 or something was the first time. So it's like pre that time and post that time, I feel like my mind probably works differently. And I don't know if I like that or if it's a good thing, but I definitely feel it. And I think that it's kind of taken us, I'm a little bit obsessed with the media theorist Marshall McLuhan. I think he did his best work probably in the 50s and 60s. But he has these great, you know, lectures are obviously available online and all this kind of thing. And he points to the way the mind works when you're reading mostly books or things are in a very like kind of finite form as like linear mind. And in linear mind, you kind of, things move in one direction. You have a goal at the end of it, which is to finish the book you're reading or whatever it is. So people of linear mind and who grew up in a time when that was the thought process of everybody, they set a goal, they head for it, they meet the goal, they form a new goal, they go for it, that whole thing. Then he has what he kind of references as acoustic mind. An acoustic mind is a mind that's probably formed more by radio, television, internet. It's something where you're immersed in something that's happening all around you all the time. So there's no there's no beginning, middle, and end to it. You're just immersed in a feed. It could be, again, radio, television, it could be anything. But it's this thought of like always being switched on all the time, and it's just sort of happening always. And those are two very, very different ways that the brain can work. And I think that part of what's going on in people's minds today is they are in a feed of information that then expects their feedback to complete the loop. And so that's gonna have effects across the board that we probably don't know about yet. It's gonna have effects on the way people see the world and how they interact with it and everything across the board. So I think that, that was something that was going on in my mind. I was like, well, you can't make a piece that represents this period of time without somehow addressing the way that people's minds are changing. And it's that more linear mind going to acoustic mind seems to be what's going on.
There's even a moment in the film that I recall where we briefly see a girl who's asking Siri, right, on her phone, what is the purpose of human existence or the meaning, and Siri is supposed to have the answer. And it made me think about this, whether this film was trying to search for an answer, right, for some meaning, which in a way we all do throughout our lives. But relating it to technology, this film also asks or begs the question, is our purpose to feed information to these machines, or are we the purpose of the information that we're given, which I think is what you're getting at.
Yeah, I think, I mean, for that moment in specific, it's sort of like, that's from the machine's perspective. So the machine's telling you how it feels from its perspective. So, I guess in general, you can't ask somebody else what your purpose is, because they'll just tell you how they see you. They'll just tell you what you are to them or what your purpose is in relation to them. So you could ask anybody around you, like, what's the point of me? And they'll tell you from their perspective who you are to them. But only you can really answer those questions for yourself. And I hope that comes across in the film, where it's like every character is speaking from their own perspective. But it's kind of like, no one is going to see them the way they see themselves, and vice versa, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and without giving too much away, she comes back and asks the same question, but gets a different response. And in my mind, that was a great tool to make me imagine that maybe she's stuck in that question. She could keep asking Siri the same question over and over again, and every time get a different answer.
Yeah, kind of the ever-changing nature of things not being so concrete. I think that's like that's a feeling that I have in our time, is that like things could just sort of shift and change constantly, and it's never the same when you sort of return to it.
One of the characters is stuck on the idea of death and life and that relationship. To me, there were moments in this film where I thought maybe I was looking at it from the perspective of afterlife, that it was looking back at maybe somebody's life or experiences. Whereas, we've talked a little bit about time, but more specifically, can you say something about this idea of life and death and what the film is trying to accomplish?
I thought it would be interesting if you were seeing it through someone's eyes, then those eyes would be the Lola Montez character that we start with. Mm. So I kind of thought it'd be interesting if she like presides over the film, and she's the viewer in that sense. It's almost like she's looking down or up or whatever at the world, and this is what she sees is all these different people's lives. And maybe they're not aware of each other, but they're all like right next to each other that whole time. I think that's kind of,
in a way, she could almost become like a god figure, right? Almost like overlooking all the actions. And in fact, there are some beautiful moments that the cinematography uses reflections through windows, and we see the same moment from a different, almost like a different dimension, even though you could make out that we're still in the normal world. So there's some really good moments of that, if you want to say anything about it.
Yeah, I think a lot of it kind of gets into the Debord concept I think we were speaking about like prior to even this conversation, which is that concept of like spectacular time, and like what is his book The Spectacle is obviously like a really, really prescient, again written 50 years ago but totally relevant to today. And yeah, in that it's like there's something about the production process in our society that makes people be constantly obsessed with the past, and it's this like extended repetition of the past. So yeah, I guess I thought it would be interesting if even this this ghostly figure who's obviously moved on completely is still kind of obsessed with like checking in every now and again, of like thinking about, you know, life and thinking about what are people doing in Brooklyn and all this stuff. It was important to kind of, yeah, touch on, I think there's like 3 people who were mentioned who are all buried in and around the cemetery Greenwood that we filmed in. Lola Montes being an actual person who is buried there. I think they mentioned Boss Tweed and then also Montgomery Clift are all like kind of buried around that area. So yeah, I thought it'd be interesting if it's like, you know, where her body is, she kind of like is preoccupied with checking in every now and again.
And how they mentioned the cemetery reminded me, when I'm thinking about this relationship of searching and experience in technology, I actually realized really quickly that the couple that's in love are one of the few people in the film that we see that don't have their phones with them, right? And sort of they're removed from technology. And it did make me, it reminded me of that, what it is to be in love, right? It's sort of like that one emotion that changes your whole perspective, your whole, it's like a paradigm shift, right? Of your whole world kind of flips upside down, and then your phone doesn't matter anymore in a sense. That was interesting.
Yeah, they're kind of open to the experience, and so they touch something, you know, spectral.
Right. I would like to show some pictures from the Instagram page so people can see a little glimpse of the behind the scenes, and maybe you can tell us a little bit more about, you know, the team or the experience of working in Brooklyn. What were some of the challenges? I mean, I imagine dealing with noise and other people might have been a challenge. I know you mentioned that, you know, it took many different shoots, but I'm going to share some pictures as you talk, and you can tell us a little bit of what this project. Oh gosh, are you seeing the Instagram page?
I see it, yeah.
Oh, okay, great. All right, so I'll let you.
I mean, obviously, as we, I don't know if we touched on it, but yeah, the film is as one of the most like micro budget as you can get. So yeah, I think a lot of the challenges production wise just ended up being that in that kind of a process, it's like it's never going to be completely the same crew that are available that day. Everybody's just sort of like arriving as they can and being involved, you know, when they have free time. And yes, so and here you see, of course, so Matt Barone, who was doing producing on the film, is also now running camera because that's what we had to do that day. So it's just sort of like, you know, there'd be some days when there was no operator available. So whoever was there would just jump in and we would just kind of get the job done. Yes, and there we are again. So there's, this was kind of like the first day. I think this was early in July of 2016, and this was the first day that we actually used the footage. So this is the clip that we just saw. And we had, I think, 2 or 3 more days that we had filmed prior to that, and all the footage got scrapped because it just didn't feel right. It didn't have the right tone. And here's the cemetery, of course. And there is Woody Pognon is running sound, and then Duke Falconer was AD that day, and he's everybody's just jumping in to try to like make sure the camera doesn't fall over onto them while they're on the ground.
It seems like you're very hands-on with the team, and you like to be very well involved. Was that the same as far as in the post process, as far as editing? Were you still very hands-on and tied to the project?
Yeah, the one piece that, as I mentioned, that really needed the team was like, and that's a day that got cut, but here we are in Sunset Park. You know, just sort of, I think it was like the third day of shooting. That image I really liked for whatever reason. It was while right after we wrapped the cemetery, we were just walking around with her to try to, get some extra shots of the character, and we just sort of came across that. Yes, there's everybody at the end of that shooting day of the clip we just watched. Just all kind of celebrating the first real, successful day. There's Rich and Pete. There's everybody.
Tell us a little bit about where people can expect to watch this in the near future. What are some of the links, social links that you can share with us so people can find out more about this film?
Coming up, and I have to get the exact date, but hopefully we can include it somewhere in the description or something like that. But I know that the Los Angeles Liftoff Festival is an online-only festival. So they're going to screen it at some point in September. I have to, again, check the definite dates. I feel like it's the 14th that week, somewhere there. But I think it exists online for at least a couple of weeks. So it's available there to watch. It's already screened in several UK-based and a couple of New York-based online festivals, which I think are what we have to look forward to for probably the rest of the year. But I'm really crossing fingers that it gets to screen physically. A few festivals come back, to physical as soon as they're able to, as soon as, that's restrictions can be lifted safely. It'd be great to sit in a movie theater and get to watch the movie. It did screen in, I think, London. London's kind of back. So there was the Romford Film Festival, happened about 3 weeks ago. And so it had its first in-person festival screening, which I, again, would have attended, except that there's restrictions on travel right now. So I'm just, of course, like WhatsApping everybody, like chomping at the bit, like, how's the attendance? Like, is everyone loving it? And it apparently went over very well. But yeah, it would have been cool to be in the room for it.
Andrew, before we wrap up, I just want to ask you, and this film takes place in 2016, an election year. We hear the radio in the background talking about Hillary's run for presidency. And in a way, now we're in another year that's much different, right, to 2016, but in a way relatable, right? It's like you said, you mentioned change in New York City. What do the current times do to the meaning behind this film, the timing of it? You feel like it will be beneficial? Does it change that for you? What can people expect as far as their experience from it now?
I mean, I hope it still feels very relevant, and I hope it kind of continues to feel relevant. I hope that, someday, 10, 20 years down the road, we can look at it and say, like, wow, I really feel like I'm back there in that moment, and I hope it does play as this time capsule for people. And I think that, I don't know what people call it, like a chronological ethnocentrism that we kind of have these days, where everybody thinks that this moment that they're in right now is like the most important thing that's ever going to happen. And everything that came before it is whatever, and everything that's going to come is who cares. And this moment is so important. And I feel like probably the film speaks to that feeling in people. And I hope that it mitigates that a little bit and kind of makes everybody get into a more meditative place of like, no, this time now is sort of part of that continuum. There's the future, there's the past, there's everything else going on all around us. Get in touch with that and maybe not be so hyper-focused on the moment as this, I don't know, be-all, end-all.
It's a film that gives hope, I definitely see it that way. And if nothing else, it can take us back to an enchanted place of walking around with no masks, talking to people, interacting, and, hopefully we'll go back to those times pretty soon. Andrew, thank you so much for sharing all your thoughts about the film. It's really great. I can't wait for more people to enjoy it and take something from it. It's always been you. Congratulations and best of luck.
Thank you so much, Diego. Thanks for having me and for having this conversation and for watching the film as well.